Hello everyone, welcome back to Labyrinth of Touhou 2. This time we'll be talking about Wriggle Nightbug, a bug of light wriggling in the dark. Starting with the base stats, we have an HP of 148, attack of 112, defense and mind of 88, magic of 60, and speed of 78. At level 1, you'll start off with base stats of 113 HP, 15 MP, 60 attack, 44 defense and mind, 34 magic, 102 speed, and 20 evasion. Each getting, of course, 10% growth rates, with the exception of MP, which growths 1 every 14 levels. The base HP recovery is 15, base TP is 25, and base MP recovery is 2. Base elemental affinities are 60 to fire, 80 to cold, 132 to wind, 188 to nature, 120 to mystic, 100 to spirit and dark, and 90 to physical. Then, of course, the status ailments are 200 to poison and paralysis, 66 to all others. Overall, her level of difficulty is 52 and library cost is 43. Overall, her stats are rather average for this point in the game. She may not have the greatest stats in the world, but you can see that her elemental affinities are absolutely amazing. Way better than anything else we've seen so far by a long shot. Not to mention her elemental resistances are not bad either, with the only real weakness being fire and slightly cold. Not to mention she levels up fast and is easy to invest into with the library. So overall she doesn't seem that bad. So let's check how good are her abilities. Let's start with Comet on Earth. It's a single target nature attack that costs 3 MP and hits for 150% of your attack minus 50% of the opponent's defense. Not very high damage, but pierces half the opponent's defense. Hits for 40,000 poison effect with a delay of 60, and the poison rate starts at 100 with its 97 plus skill level times 3. So at level 1 it is 100, and at level 5, it is a 112. Right? Yeah, 112. And then next up we have Firefly Phenomenon. It is a multi-target nature attack that costs 4 MP, takes 210% of your attack minus 82% of your opponent's defense. This one has a poison effect of 24,000, delay of 48, and a poison rate of 85 plus skill level times 3. So, starts off at 88 and goes up to 100. And then finally, we have Nightbug Tornado. 6 MP, hits all enemies with nature effect. Hits for 182% of your attack, minus 67% of your opponent's defense. Has a delay of 36, and damage is increased if the enemy is poisoned. We don't know how much though. Sorry, I couldn't find out. Overall, she seems to have great poison effects, while her damage doesn't appear to be that great, especially not coming off a good attack stat. It's made up for by the poison damage and the fact that it pierces defense. Though she does only have nature, which there are better nature attackers, so maybe not the best element. Next up we have Defense, Mind, Evasion, really good for the fact that she is a bulky attacker. Just bulky in general, has some attacking moves. Bulky status inflictor, I guess. Though you might want to invest in HP boost. Motivate Hard enhance our experience, of course, as well as Team 9. We've talked about this before, but we did mention that there is one S tier and one E tier so far in here. We have not talked about Miss tier yet, but yeah, so one S and one E tier so far. So overall you could run her with Rumia, and if you really want you could try and make Cherno work. So not bad since it gives skill level times 8, so the 16 per person you could get at least just 16 if you just have Rumia. Next up is Inhale Poison. If on the user's turn their front line is affected by poison, user's HP will be restored by skill level times 12% per ally affected by poison. Also reduces the effect of poison on all frontliners. This is good against anything that inflicts poison, which is like 1 or 2 enemies in the entire game. This would be good as if there's just some way to inflict poison on your own teammates, or some way to just have an enemy that actually inflicts poison. But sadly, there's nothing like that. Next up is Kodoku Queen. If more allies or foes inflicted by poison, the more user stats increase. Since you're going to be inflicting a lot of poison on the enemies, this is just basically hit enemies to get more stats, which is overall good. Next up, Toxic Vaccine. Lowers the chance of allies to be affected by poison by 20 times skill level percent. The allies affected by poison HP reduction will be reduced by skill level times 20%. And lowering of all stats will be slightly nullified. Effect is only active if the user's on the front line. Yeah. So basically, this basically negates poison almost completely. Most of the effects are relatively minor for getting poisoned if you have Toxic Vaccine. Then next up we have Insect's Commando. On the front line, damage against insect effects increases, but it's not stacked for similar effects. Sadly, you're going to be past most of this by the time you get wriggle, but it is still somewhat good in a couple of niche situations, but for the most part, pretty useless. And then lastly, Poison Touch. If the user receives a direct attack from an enemy, the user will have a 35 times skill opposite chance of using a counterattack with chance to inflict poison and paralysis. Do not know what the chance of inflicting it is, but overall it is fairly good. I know from experience, and poison and paralysis are fairly good to inflict, just an extra chance to inflict even more poison. So overall, how does Wriggle work? Well, amazingly. Sadly, she doesn't have the best attacking stat, and her moves do not come with the best sort of attacking abilities, but the amount of poison damage they inflict is massive. The poison effect is really strong. Poison just in general is really good at taking down really hard to kill enemies, since I do believe it does sort of like percentage damage, as it can take down the final bosses, the enhanced final boss, before it even transforms. And before it transforms, I believe I looked it up and it had 2 billion HP, I believe, or 2 trillion HP, one of the two. It's well beyond what you could actually do. They didn't expect that you'd actually be able to hurt the final boss, even move its health bar a noticeable percent before it transformed, which is why they made it that high. But you can actually kill it using poison. So yeah, that gives you an idea of how great it is, especially later games, when you can't burst down bosses really easily, to have poison on your team. And those defensive stats aren't bad. Coming off of decent HP stats and not bad defenses, she can hold her own along with, say, Reimu and other supportive tanks. So obviously, what subclass do we want? I think it's pretty obvious. I mentioned that some characters have like subclasses perfectly fitted to them, and that makes the character much better. And we'll talk about that. So first, Guardian makes her better at tanking, means that she can take more hits, get more counterattacks for poison paralysis, as well as stay out a bit longer to keep inflicting more poison. Not bad. Monk makes you a bit faster to get off more poison and gives you some healing for your nice HP stat, but overall is a bit lackluster in that you could probably do more with another subclass. Again, you don't hit very hard, so increasing your attack does make you do a little bit of damage, but still not as much as another character. Magic, you have no real reason to be using this, I don't know. Doesn't have any healing spells, doesn't have any buffing spells, doesn't have any debuffing spells. MP pull is rather lackluster. She's probably going to be wanting to poison the enemy constantly, so no time to give buffs. Strategist is not bad because she can stay out for quite a while, and it gives extra defensive stats to your party as well as buffs your attacker, so overall not bad. Again, you probably can get more out of just putting this on another attacker with Gambler, and most of her damage is coming off of poison, which is not affected by any of this. Gambler just makes her die really easily, negating her bulky part, and means it's going to use it per mana pull real quick. Diva is Diva, she has no any synergy with this. And Transcendent, overall, like kind of anything else, so it just increases all stats, which you're going to not use as many other stats. And of course you'll notice I skipped over Toxologist. This, of course, gives you even more ailment resistances, basically making you immune to all status ailments. Gives you HP up, MP up to keep poison fuel. HP up is the big one, so you can get a little bit extra bulkiness. Effect increased by 20% is great, even since you have such high poison effect with 40k already. Increasing that by 20% is actually quite impressive. Toxic Defense, of course, makes others immune to statuses. If you just want to run her as an anti-status barrier, she is really great at that. This is not very useful And then these are very useful. It's mostly just used for enhanced toxins, which just essentially gives her a massive 20% boost to all her damage, while of course Toxiologist class gives her a little bit more bulkiness. I know I haven't really gone over too much with Wriggle. It feels like we just went through this really quick, but there isn't really much to say. She's kind of just very simple. She wants to poison things. She doesn't have too many strategies, she just wants to poison things. And she just wants to sit there, take hits, and poison things. But overall, how good is that? Well, let's run down the tier list real quick. S tier, C tier, F tier, borderline 1, borderline 3, borderline 2, C tier, S tier, E tier, A tier, S plus, E tier, S plus, S, and then what is Wriggle? Drumroll please, and S. You might think this is a bit interesting, because I mean she's only good for poisoning things. But I think it's a shame not to put someone in S, when as I mentioned, they can kill the final boss by themselves. Well, not by themselves, with the specific set of support, without it even transforming. Like, you have to freeze it in time for it to do that, obviously, because it'll transform if you give it enough time, but basically, if you freeze your final boss in time, you can kill it like 5 billion times faster than anyone else. Not to mention, like, even not using cheese strategies, that is totally a cheese strategy. Even actually, like, playing legitly, Wriggle's poison effect just melts through most bosses fairly quickly. Wriggle is fairly fast. Well, not fairly fast, she's actually half slow. But she's fast enough that you're going to be getting a lot of poison effects out. And if you have it properly upgraded, and with Toxologist, she's most likely going to be melting through any boss in somewhere around, I'm going to say, 10 turns or so. So, assuming you're not running a glass cannon comp, or against something that just hits really hard right off the back and keeps hitting, there's very few fights in which Wriggle is not great for. The only thing I can really think of is something that just has insane overall attack pressure that you're going to want to one-hit KO, or something with insane regeneration that you aren't planning on keeping locked in time with an infinite loop. So yeah, that's the only real reason you would not run Wriggle. She just overall provides a much needed damage buff, like extra damage to anything. Even later in the game with a lot of HP regeneration, I still say that she's half decent. You could still get on little residual amounts of damage, but I do understand why you might want to just go for a more bursty strategy. But overall, yeah, Wriggle is fairly good. Just fits in a lot of team comps, just extra damage, doesn't die very easily, so she can be used to switch things out if need be. She just overall just has a niche role that actually is useful in a variety of different manners. So it's not very niche at all, it's just poisoning things is actually just really good, and just not at all a cheese strategy. But anyways, I think that's enough on Wriggle. Next time, actually, we're gonna have Kaguya and Moku, but you can only get one of the two, and the other one will appear much later in the game. So I might upload up to like episode 592 in order to get both of them, or what I'm thinking I will be doing is next time we'll be talking about the one that I actually pick. Until then, next time we'll be talking about either Moku or Kaguya. Until then, see ya.